Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's lesson on the types of demand. This is an exciting topic because it shows us that demand isn't always straightforward. So, as you consider markets and demand, strand consumers' decision making, sub-strand demand for goods and services, and we are going to focus on the focal area 2, the types of demand. Yesterday, we learned about the law of demand, how prices affect the quantity people want to buy. Today we are going to discover that demand is more complex. Sometimes the demand for one good depends on the demand for another good. Sometimes goods are demanded together. Sometimes they are alternatives. By the end of the lesson, learners were able to identify the 4 types of demand. Explain each type with clear definitions and examples. Differentiate between the types using real-life scenarios. Apply this knowledge to analyze market relationships. And now, beyond the list, understand how different types of demand affect consumer behavior. We are looking at certain essential questions that are very important to our lesson today. Before we dive in, think about these questions. First, why is the demand for some goods dependent on the demand for other goods? Think about cassava and garri. If you want more garri, what happens to the demand for cassava? Second, what goods are typically demanded together and why? Think about a pen and paper or a car and petrol. The next essential question is, how do substitutes and alternatives affect demand? If the price of Milo goes up, what happens to the demand for Rich Choco? Can one good have multiple uses? And how does this affect its demand? Think about palm nuts. They can be used for oil, soap, or palm kernel. The last one on the list, how do these different types of demand help us understand markets better? Why is it important to know these relationships? Keep these questions in mind. We will answer them together as you explore the types of demand. You want to have a gallery walk introduction. Here, what I want you to do is observe and identify. Instruction for the activity. We have 4 stations that are going to display. We are going to start with a collaborative core activity called gallery walk. This is where we observe images and identify patterns without any explanation. I'm showing you 4 stations with different images and scenarios. At each station, you will see goods or relationship between goods. Your task is to 1. Look carefully at each station. Observe the relationship between the goods. Think about why these goods are related. Write down your observation on a sticky note. You will do this for about some minutes, then we will come back together and we'll explain what each type of demand is. Let's begin. Look at station 1. What do you see? You see cassava, a root vegetable widely grown in Ghana. From cassava, we can make 3 products. If you look at the picture, we have gari, starch, and cassava dough. That is Banchimori. Are you okay, Banchimori? Of the relationship, if people want more gari, what happens to the demand for cassava? That's the question. Are these 3 products independent, or is their demand connected? Write your observation on a sticky note. What do you notice about how these goods are related? Look at the second station. You see a toothbrush and a toothpaste. Observe the relationship. Can you see a toothbrush without toothpaste? Not really. It's not very effective. Can you use toothpaste without a toothbrush? Technically, yes, but it's not the normal way. When people buy a toothbrush, do they also buy toothpaste? The demand for toothbrushes increases. What happens to the demand for toothpaste? Write your observations. What do you notice about how these goods are related? Look at station 3. You see Milo and Rich Choco, 2 popular chocolate drinks in Ghana. Observe the relationship. Are these goods used together, like toothbrush and toothpaste? No. Are these goods derived from each other, like cassava and gari? Of course, no. What's the relation between them? If the price of Milo increases, what might happen to the demand for Rich Choco? Are they alternatives? Can they satisfy the same need? Write your observations. What do you notice about how these goods are related? You write your observation. Let's go to station 4. Look at station 4. You see palm nuts, an important crop in Ghana. Now observe the relationship. You see palm nuts, you have seen palm oil, palm nut soup, palm kernel. Palm nuts can be used to make palm oil. Palm nuts can be used to make palm nut soup. Palm nuts can be used to extract palm kernels. That is adre. These are 3 different uses for the same good. The demand for palm oil increases. What happens to the demand for palm nuts? The demand for palm nut soup increases. What happens to the demand for palm nuts? Do these different uses compete for the same palm nuts? Write your observation. What do you notice about this relationship? Write your observations down. Now let's reflect on the gallery walk that we had. Now let's reflect on what you observe at all 4 stations. At station 1, cassava. So we are going to have a summary of the observation from each station. Are all these relationships the same? At station 1, cassava, you saw that the demand for garri, starch, and cassava dough depends on the demand for cassava. They are derived from cassava. So we get all these products from cassava. At station 2, toothbrush and toothpaste, you saw that these goods are demanded together. They are complementary. That is, they are jointly used. That's what we mean. The third station, Milo and Rich Choco, you saw that these are alternatives. They compete with each other. What we are trying to say is that you can use Milo in place of Rich Choco or Rich Choco in place of Milo. So they are competitive. At station 4, palm nuts, you saw that one good has multiple uses. And these uses compete for the same resources. You might need palm nut to make palm nut soup, palm kernel, or that of palm oil. Notice that these are 4 different types of relationships. They are not all the same. As the question was posed, are all these relationships the same? Of course, no. They are not all the same. This is what we are going to explore in detail now. Each of these relationships represents a different type of demand. Now, as you go through the 4 types that we have considered, the first one is type 1, derived demand. That's why we have cassava, and you derive dough from it, cassava dough, starch, and that of garri. Let's formally introduce the first type of demand, derived demand. And what is it? Derived demand occurs when the demand for one good or service is derived from the demand for another related good or service. In simple terms, the demand for one good depends on the demand for another good. What we mean is that if people want garri, more garri, it means that the one who prepares garri for you to come and buy will demand more cassava in order to prepare more garri for you to buy. Here's how it works. Farmers grow cassava because there is demand for cassava products. If people want more garri, farmers need more cassava. If people want more cassava dough, farmers need more cassava. So the demand for cassava is derived from the demand for these products. So when there's a demand for garri, when there's demand for cassava dough, or that of starch, that means that automatically there will be a demand for cassava. So the demand for cassava is derived because of the products that we get from it. So for example, we have cassava, as you see the picture on the screen. Down there, have garri, starch, and cassava dough. In real life examples from Ghana, let's use cocoa for instance. Demand for cocoa beans is derived from demand for cocoa products like chocolate, cocoa powder, etc. Again, Demand for timber is derived from demand for furniture and building materials. Further, demand for leather is derived from demand for shoes and bags. Demand for flour is demand for bread and pastries. The key point here is that if the demand for the final product increases, the demand for the raw material, that is the input, also increases. They move together. This is why farmers and producers may pay attention to what consumers want. If demand for product falls, demand for the input also falls. Now let's explore the second type of demand, joint or complementary demand. What is it? Joint demand arises when two or more goods are demanded together because they are paired with each other. They complement each other. In simple terms, these goods are used together. We need both to satisfy a need. Let's consider the picture that we will look through the gallery again. Colgate toothpaste and that of the brush. A toothbrush is not very useful without toothpaste. Toothpaste is not typically used without a toothbrush. When people buy a toothbrush, they also buy toothpaste. When demand for toothbrushes increases, demand for toothpaste also increases. They move together. So example, we have toothpaste and brush as we have the picture over there. Now, in our Ghanaian setting, let's have a certain rare examples to give us deeper understanding of this type of demand. Pen and paper. We need both to write. You have a paper, without pen you cannot write. You have a pen, without a paper you cannot write. So, likewise, car and petrol, you need both to drive. If there's a car and there's no fuel in it, you cannot drive the vehicle. So you need both to drive. Bread and butter, they are often consumed together. This may not be a perfect example, but most of the time they are consumed together. Shoes and socks, they complement each other. Rice and stew, they are often eaten together. Notebook and pen, students need both. The key point here is that if the price of one complementary goods increases, the demand for the other might decrease. For example, if toothpaste becomes very expensive, people might buy fewer toothbrushes because they cannot afford the toothpaste to use with them. This is important for business. If you sell one complementary good, you should think about the price of the other. The third type. Now let's explore the third type of demand, competitive demand. In another side, we also call it substitutes. Competitive demand exists when two or more goods or services are alternatives for satisfying the same consumer need or want. An increase in the price of one product leads to an increase in the demand for its substitutes. In simple terms, these goods compete with each other. They are substitutes. You can choose one or the other. So example, Milo and Rich Choco. Can talk about Ideal Milk and that of Carnation Milk, Peak Milk or Pomo, and what have you. Here, both Milo and Rich Choco are chocolate drinks. They satisfy the same need. The desire for a chocolate drink. If the price of Milo increases, people might switch to Rich Choco. If the price of Rich Choco decreases, demand for Rich Choco increases, demand for Milo might decrease. They compete for the same consumers. Let's have real examples from Ghana. Milo versus Rich Choco, or Ovaltine, or chocolate drinks. Bread versus wache. Do you know wache? Wache here means beans in the Hausa language. Wache does not mean the rice that you go and buy. No. So bread and beans, or beans and gari, all breakfast foods. Taxi versus trotro, or versus private car or transportation. MTN versus Telecel versus Airtel, or mobile networks. Important distinction. Now let's look at the key point here. When one substitute becomes more expensive or less available, demand for the other increases. This is why businesses compete on price and quality. Important distinction. Competitive goods are substitutes. They are different from complementary goods, which are used together. Finally, let's explore the fourth type of demand, composite demand. Composite demand occurs when a good or service is demanded for multiple uses or purposes. Different uses compete for the same resource. In simpler terms, one good can be used in many different ways. The different uses compete for the same supply. Example, the demand for palm nuts is composite because palm nuts can be used for palm oil, as you have seen over there from the picture there, palm nut soup or palm kernel extraction. Real life examples in Ghana we have been doing for the first three. Cocoa beans can be used for chocolate, cocoa powder, or cocoa butter. Timber can be used for furniture, building materials, or fuel. That is, that uses for firewood and what have you. Corn can be used for food, animal feed, or biofuel. Sugarcane can be used for sugar, juice, ethanol. That's alcohol. Cassava can be used for gari, starch, cassava dough, or animal feed. The key point, when demand for one use increases, the price of the good might increase because it becomes scarcer. scarcer. This affects the availability and price for other uses. This is important for understanding resource allocation and competition in markets. I want us to have some scenario based on the identification. So we have going to consider these scenarios. The first one, now we are going to apply what we have learned. I'm going to give you 4 scenarios, and your job is to, 1, read each scenario carefully. Identify what type of demand it represents. Derive, joint, competitive, or composite. Explain your reasoning and write it. You will work individually at your homes. However, if you have your counterpart as a group, you can also do same. You can think, pair, and share. Each one will get 1 scenario card. You have about 3 minutes to think about it and prepare your answer. Then each one will write a scenario and answer. Let's begin. The first scenario, the bakery. I should have shown you images of flour, wheat, and bread. But all the same, let's go through it this way. What type of demand is this? Look at the scenario test. A bakery in Kumasi produces bread. The demand for bread has increased significantly because the school has increased its student population. The bakery now needs to buy more flour to meet this increased demand for bread. The flour supplier has noticed that their sales have increased because of the increased demand for bread. Read this carefully. A bakery produces bread. Demand for bread increases. As a result, the bakery needs more flour. The flour supplier sales increases. Take up a relationship. Is the demand for flour dependent on the demand for bread? Does the demand for flour come from the demand for bread? Are flour and bread used together? Are they alternatives? Does flour have multiple uses? Think about it. If you are there with your friend, then you can think, share, and pair. Think, share. Think, pair, share. Or if you are there alone, then analyze it very well. You'll tell which type of demand is this. You can write your answer down. Correct. This is derived demand. The demand for flour is derived from the demand for bread. When demand for bread increases, demand for flour also increases. Here is scenario 2, the school canteen. Read this carefully. It's on the screen. The canteen sells rice and stew together. Students buy them as a pair. When the price of one increases, demand for both decreases. So the school canteen sells rice and stew as a meal. Students are really, so read it carefully. Read it carefully. Think about the relationship. Are rice and stew used together? Do they complement each other? Are they alternatives? Is the demand for one derived from the other? Does one have multiple uses? I give you some few seconds to think about it. Which type of demand is this? Correct. This is joint or complementary demand. Rice and stew are demanded together. They complement each other. When the price of one increases, demand for both decreases because they are consumed as a pair. Yes, scenario 3, the beverage market. Read this carefully. That is the scenario test on the screen. Read it carefully. Milo and Rich Choco are both chocolate drinks. When Milo's price increases, consumers switch to Rich Choco. Rich Choco's demand increases. Think about the relationship. Are Milo and Rich Choco used together? Are they alternatives? Can they satisfy the same need? Is the demand for one derived from the other? Does one have multiple uses? What type of demand is this? Correct. This is competitive demand. Did you have that answer? Then thumbs up. Milo and Rich Choco are substitutes. They compete with each other. When the price of one increases, demand for the other increases because consumers switch to the cheaper alternative. Here is scenario 4, the palm nut harvest. So we look at the scenario test. Read this carefully. Palm nuts are limited. They can be used for oil, soup, or kernels. Different uses compete for the same palm nuts. If more go to oil, fewer are available for soup and kernels. Think about the relationship. Does one good have multiple uses? Do these uses compete for the same resource? Is the demand for one derived from the other? Are they used together? Are they alternatives? What type of demand is this? Think about it. Write your answer. Correct. This is composite demand. Palm nuts have multiple uses. The different uses compete for the same limited resource. When demand for one use increases, the others are affected because palm nuts become scarcer. Now you have these key takeaways. from the types of demand that we have gone through this morning. Let's summarize what we have learned today about the 4 types of demand. Type 1, demand, derived demand. Definition says demand for one good depends on demand for another. Examples we have flour depends on demand for bread. The key point here is input demand comes from final product demand. Flour is used to produce bread. So if the demand for bread increases, automatically there will be a high demand for the input, which is flour. So notice that. Type 2, joint or complementary demand. 2 goods demanded together. Example, toothbrush and toothpaste. Flashlight and battery. The key point is here is that they complement each other, used as a pair. That is, cannot use one without the other. They are used together. The third type is competitive demand. Goods are alternatives. They compete. That is, they are substitutes. Example is Milo and Richiko, as we have it in our lesson with the pictures that you saw on the screen. The key point, when one's price increases, demand for the other increases. That is competitive demand. Type 4, composite demand. In the short definition, say one good has multiple uses. Uses compete. That is, those who want palm nut, for example, for oil, those who want it for soup, those who want it for kernels, will compete for the same limited resource. So the key point is that it's a limited resource. Different uses compete. So oil, soup, kernel are all competing for the palm nut. Before you consider the exit ticket, why is it important to study all these types? Understanding these types of demand help us. 1, to predict market behavior. 2, to understand relationship between goods. 3, to make better business decisions. 4, analyze how changes in one market affect others. And last but not least, understand resource allocation. These concepts are fundamental to economics and help us understand how real markets work. Before we finish, I want to check your understanding. Answer these 3 exit ticket questions. 1, look at the scenario about a pen and a notebook. Which type of demand is this? Identify and explain. Look at this scenario. The student buys a pen and a notebook together for school. Which type of demand is this? Two, you explain your answer. Which type of demand is this? Explain your answer. Differentiate. Explain the, here you have to supposed to identify and explain the first one. So you are supposed to differentiate. Explain the difference between competitive demand and joint demand using examples. So explain the difference between competitive demand and joint demand. Use example to make it clear. That's what we mean. And now when released, you apply. If the price of cassava increases significantly, what will happen to the demand for Gary? What type of demand? Explain this relationship. So if cassava prices increase, what happens to Gary demand? What type of demand? Explain this. What type of demand? Explain this. Take about 3 minutes to answer. Be clear and thoughtful in your response. This will help me understand what you have learned and what we might need to review. You can write your answers on a paper and possibly bring it to school when you resume. See you next lesson. Thank you. Bye.